The demon was charging straight at them at that moment. Nightingale was surprised to discover that there was a vortex of magic energy slowly rotating within the demon's body, and a shining stone embedded in its arm. Just as the demon was about to collide with the hot air balloon, Nightingale leaped out of the mist and appeared behind the demon. The monstrous winged demonic beast suddenly sank under the increased weight on its back. The demon seemed to realize something and abruptly turned around. But it was greeted by the thunderous roar of a 12mm caliber revolver. The bullet tore through the shroud of flames and smoke and blasted a fist-sized hole in the demon's head. Sticky blood splattered everywhere, and a pungent smell of blood filled the air. The enemies convulsed and fell to the ground, while the demonic beast changed its direction, gliding past the hot air balloon from the side. Just as Nightingale was about to turn back towards the top of the balloon, an unexpected incident occurred. The tilting corpse pulled on the reins, causing the mount to suddenly roll to the side, throwing her off. Before she could react, she had already been thrown beyond a safe distance to return on her own. She heard her sisters shouting in panic, but it was all in vain. Lightning was engaged in a battle with the demons, and even if Maisie transformed into an eagle, she couldn't lift herself up. Nightingale was well aware of the imminent outcome she was about to face. Wendy struggled to control the wind direction but was powerless to stop it. Nightingale closed her eyes, and the scene of her encounter with Roland replayed in her mind. She sat on the edge of the bed, toying with the dagger in her hand, waiting for the prince to enter through the door. Everything started to fade away, leaving only the smiling face of the prince. Nightingale had only one regret, perhaps, was that she couldn't accompany him until the end. Suddenly, a series of high-pitched chirps reached her ears. Nightingale opened her eyes and saw a white figure diving straight towards her, landing on her chest. It was Maisie. She was about to say something when a dazzling white light burst forth from the bird's body. Its form instantly expanded, revealing enormous and formidable flesh wings unfurling from its back. Feathers scattered, and the bird's head transformed into a terrifying and fearsome visage, resembling a flying demonic beast. Maisie let out a deafening roar as her claws grabbed Nightingale and threw her upwards. When Maisie carried Nightingale into the battle, the situation instantly reversed. The demons let out an angry roar and was forced to abandon the pursuit of Lightning. Instead, it fiercely hurled a spear towards Maisie. Nightingale tapped Maisie twice, and Maisie's body rapidly shrank, transforming back into a bird. The spear whistled past them, plunging into the sea. In the next instant, Nightingale emerged from the mist and returned to Maisie's back, seamlessly evading the attack. Just as they were about to collide, Maisie suddenly descended, brushing past the enemy's shoulder. Once she regained her balance, Nightingale had disappeared from Maisie's back. She reappeared behind the demons like a phantom. With anger in her eyes, she pulled the trigger, and the gunshots resounded continuously. The demon fell into the ocean. The demonic beast, now without its master, was also struck down by lightning with her pistol, falling into the sea and quickly disappearing. A hot air balloon descended slowly. Everyone anxiously looked at Roland. Wendy mentioned that they had been delayed for so long, and the hot air balloon would take a while to reach the town. They now had to proceed with Lightning and Maisie leading the way for His Highness. Maisie's enormous head opened its jaws wide, reassuring everyone that she was fine. Lightning seemed a bit downcast, probably feeling that as an adventurer, she was afraid of fighting the enemy, which led them all into this predicament. She quietly said she was fine as well. Before setting off, Nightingale gently patted her head, telling her that it wasn't her fault. The witches had bound the unconscious prince to Maisie's back, while Lightning carried the severed hand. The two quickly took off, soaring along the Crimson Water River towards the town. The other witches realized that they needed to leave as soon as possible. The hot air balloon ascended once again, and now only 5 people remained. Soraya was puzzled, wondering why the hot air balloon was spotted, while having sky camouflage and should be difficult to distinguish at a height of 2 kilometers. Sylvie furrowed her brow and explained that there was a gigantic demon with a head even larger than its body, covered in countless eyes. Anna recalled the strangeness of the 2 flying mounts, their blood was a deep blue color instead of the dark black color from the typical hybrid demonic beasts. Wendy exclaimed how fortunate it was that Maisie could transform into their likeness. If it wasn't for her saving Nightingale, they would all have been in danger. Nightingale, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up. She revealed that Maisie's abilities had evolved. The magical energy within her was no longer a swirling vortex but had transformed into a fixed form, a pair of unfurled white wings, expanding gracefully. Lightning held onto the arm of His Highness, feeling overwhelming guilt. The demons may have had a fearsome appearance, but it wasn't overwhelmingly powerful in the air. If she had left the hot air balloon from the beginning to intercept the enemy, His Highness wouldn't have suffered such severe injuries. It was at that moment that Lightning realized how far she still was from being an outstanding adventurer. His Highness's breathing grew weaker, and his body grew colder. They had to move at full speed. By the time they reached the border town, Lightning felt dizzy and disoriented. The excessive speed not only drained her magical energy rapidly but also put a tremendous strain on her body. She gritted her teeth and, using her last ounce of strength, landed directly in front of the castle's courtyard. She shouted towards Carter, who had rushed over with a gun upon hearing the commotion, quickly summoned Miss Nanoa. "The prince is injured." Roland suddenly opened his eyes, finding himself lying on a soft, spacious bed. Above him was a familiar ceiling. He turned his head to look at his shoulders, both left and right seemed to be intact. Testing his hands, they too appeared to function as normal. Everything felt like a dream, yet he knew it was not. Encounters with the demons and subsequent attack were undeniably real. Being unscathed in his bedroom meant they had successfully escaped the demons' pursuit and safely returned to the castle. He wondered if everyone else returned safely. He propped himself up, a sense of weakness coursing through his body. He was about to call someone when he saw, at the edge of the room, against the wall, a line of witches: Anna, Nightingale, Lightning, Maisie, and Nanoa. They were leaning on each other, their breaths steady, eyes closed, seemingly deep in sleep. Roland quietly stood up and pulled back the curtains. Anna was woke up by the sound, rubbing the sleepiness away. She stepped over to Roland. When Roland asked about the other witches, Anna's voice took a somber tone. She told him everyone was fine except him. Before he could utter another word, Anna hugged him tightly, calling him a fool. Anna's actions woke the other witches. Hearing Anna repeatedly call the prince a fool, they joyously got up and flocked over. Lightning was the next to jump on Roland, followed by Nanoa and Maisie. Nightingale hesitated for a moment but finally decided to join, wrapping everyone into her arms from behind. Thus, they all huddled together, reluctant to let go for a long time. At night, Roland learned about the detailed course of events. The witches had jointly defeated the pursuing demons, while Lightning and Maisie had escorted him back in advance. After receiving treatment from Nanoa, his broken arm swiftly healed, but due to severe blood loss, he had been unconscious for a whole day. This mission had been somewhat unexpected. Even the sky-camouflaged hot air balloon could be spotted by the demons. Despite the significant danger, the acquired intelligence was extremely valuable. The so-called demons were not some messengers of hell, but seemed more like a highly advanced civilization. Nightingale also discovered that magic existed within the demons, but unlike the witches, their magic seemed to rely on certain mechanisms to be activated, like the gem embedded on their arms. Unfortunately, all the demons' bodies had fallen into the sea, so Roland couldn't further verify these theories. Lastly, concerning the red liquid in the stone tower, Roland suspected that the red mist in the sky was formed by the vaporization of this liquid. Perhaps demons not expanding further into the wilderness, or even the four great kingdoms, was due to the limits of the gas's coverage area? Regardless, according to all the information they had, there would be no immediate threat to the border town. At this point, the door to his bedroom opened, and standing in the doorway was Anna, dressed in a white nightgown. She closed the door behind her and bolted it. Then, she took Roland's hand and walked him to the bed. Though she seemed a little nervous, there was no hesitation in her eyes. They both knew what was about to happen. Roland lifted her by the waist and gently placed her on the bed. He found himself growing nervous. Just as he was lost in thought, Anna's soft voice echoed in his ear, asking him if he had considered the possibility of losing his own life when he pushed her away on the hot air balloon. Roland was taken aback, not expecting her to ask such a question. He had just acted instinctively, but Anna insisted that Roland, as the future ruler of Grey Castle and the hope of all witches, should not have risked his life for her. Roland smiled, saying he couldn't stand by and watch her be attacked without doing anything. Even if he had more time to think, he would still have made the same choice. Anna lowered her eyelashes, falling silent for a moment before speaking again. She wanted to know more about Roland's past, to understand him better. Roland thought for a while, and decided not to speak about the past of the fourth prince and the palace, but to share his own true story. He described how he had lived in a city much larger than Grey Castle, how he was a troublemaker in school, and how he had completed all his studies as he grew older. With half-closed eyes, he slowly narrated his embellished past. It had been a long time since he had experienced this sort of unguarded, unrestrained communication. Perhaps it was time for the next step? Turning his head slightly, Roland found that Anna had already closed her eyes, her chest gently rising and falling against his side, peacefully lost in sleep like a kitten. He shook his head and then couldn't help but chuckle. Whispering a goodnight, he too succumbed to the world of dreams. As the morning sunlight seeped through the gaps in the curtains, everyone began to rise from their beds and stretch. Wendy and Sylvie exchanged greetings while preparing for their morning routine with a basin of fresh water. Nightingale rubbed her eyes, seemingly having stayed up late the previous night. Wendy asked her if she had not slept well, to which Nightingale replied that she had many dreams. Sylvie snorted in disbelief. She had clearly seen Nightingale snuck off to the third floor of the castle last night, even standing in front of the Prince Roland's room for quite some time. Just as she was about to comment, Nightingale suddenly turned to stare at her. At her silent warning, Sylvie decided it was best not to be overly curious. Sylvie had gradually come to accept the undergarments that Roland had provided for the witches. She had to admit, Prince Roland was not what she thought to be, but a really great person. Thinking of him now brought a warmth to her heart. She could never expect there were nobles who would willingly risk injury for a witch. Witnessing Roland's selfless act of pushing Anna away had touched something deep within her. The witches of the Witch Union were not mere tools under his control, but his important companions. If Roland could join hands with Tilly, combining their strength, they might truly create a new kingdom where witches and ordinary people can all live in peace. Maisie was showing off her new form in the newly renovated backyard of the castle, twirling around for everyone to see. This brown-feathered giant bird, including its tail, was a full 10 meters long, with a wingspan nearly 15 meters. Its sharp teeth were intimidating, and if it hadn't been for Maisie's newly evolved ability, everyone probably wouldn't have made it back. Nightingale stroked Maisie's smooth neck, saying that she will prepare a bag of charcoal-grilled fish chips for Maisie every day. The giant bird's tail wagged more joyfully. As per usual, it was time to test the new abilities. Maisie took Roland and Nightingale into the sky. The brown-feathered giant bird she had transformed into was even larger than the original version ridden by the demons, and her flight speed was about 80 kilometers per hour, although still much slower compared to lightning, but she can now carry people on her back. Now, the magic power contained within Maisie had greatly increased. Roland extended his arms, experiencing the sensation of riding a dragon. Moreover, through Maisie, Roland confirmed his previous theory: a witch's evolution depends on her understanding of her own abilities. Whether this understanding is acquired through learning or sudden enlightenment, it can both prompt changes in abilities. They soon landed at the new apartment building. After nearly 4 months of construction and renovation, the building was finally ready for use. Each witch had her own private bedroom. Evelyn thought back to the cement that had placed a few months ago during initial phase of the construction. Mixed with stone, it really could form various shapes. Moving into her new room, Evelyn felt a bit anxious. It had been a month since she came to the border town, and aside from tasting wines for His Highness, she hadn't done anything else. In the last test, she ranked last among the witches, scoring only 5 points. Even so, His Highness showed no signs of treating her any differently. Candle, excited, pushed open the bedroom door, inviting Evelyn to see the kitchen. Candle paused, then squatted down to touch her forehead and asked her if everything was all right. After a moment of silence, Evelyn spoke softly. It had been a month since they arrived, everyone had their own tasks. Lien's construction of the new city walls was almost complete. Honey had trained a large number of flying messengers for His Highness, and Sylvie had accompanied His Highness to investigate those terrifying creatures. Yet she still had nothing to do. She didn't understand why His Highness had chosen her. Candle pondered for a while and suggested Evelyn ask His Highness herself. Evelyn was startled, but Candle reassured her, saying that Prince Roland was a good person. Even Sylvie had changed her previous stance of keeping her distance and being wary of the prince, and began to praise Prince Roland. After some consideration, Evelyn decided to do as Candle suggested, in order not to continue suffering from this insecurity. Roland summoned Berev to his office. He asked Berev to issue a recruitment notice. As much as possible, the workers processing the starch should be female. Roland believed that women were more meticulous in their work and hoped to see more women take up jobs. He also demanded that after the next round of assessments, the town hall under Berev's responsibility must recruit a group of female apprentices. Berev responded that there was no precedent for this, and if it was just about being meticulous, his apprentices were no less competent than any woman. Roland bluntly stated, if there's no precedent, then they'll create one. Roland needed all women to take on the task of building the town and needed to guide people to change their perceptions. After Berev left, Nightingale appeared. When she heard the word starch, she thought Roland was about to cook something delicious. Roland simply explained how to obtain starch. Although starch could make decent ingredients, Roland's focus was not on food. It was a key material for producing explosives. Nitroglycerin had not yet started to be trialed, and conditions for TNT were even more out of reach, so nitrocellulose became the most easily manufactured high explosive. While Roland was thinking about explosions, and Nightingale was contemplating new dishes, meanwhile there came a knock on the office door. The door creaked open, and Roland was surprised to see that it was Evelyn standing outside. She walked to the desk and bowed her head, seeming a little nervous. She wanted to ask a question, and Roland smiled, inviting her to ask anything she wanted. Evelyn, her voice trembling, asked why he had chosen her to come to the border town. Roland was slightly surprised by the question. Evelyn went on to say that her abilities were not outstanding, and that the salary Roland provided was enough to hire a professional brewer in the capital. Roland didn't answer but stood up and asked, "How do you find the taste of those drinks?" Evelyn gave her evaluation of all the alcohol. Roland stood up and opened a cabinet, taking out a jar of wheat beer from the top shelf and placing it in front of Evelyn. He asked her if she could transform this wheat beer into the baijiu he brewed. Evelyn extended her hands, held the jar, and soon the dim yellow liquor inside began to change. As bubbles surged, the beer became clearer and clearer, until it was as transparent as water. Roland tasted it, and it was indeed the taste of high-alcohol liquor. Roland said that this was the reason why he chose Evelyn. Looking at her puzzled face, he explained that he planned to open a brewery, and he wanted Evelyn to be his chief brewer. In the Palace Hall of Internal Winter City, Garcia Wimbledon, draped in a fur coat, sat on the throne, listening to the appeal and request of a nobleman. The kneeling nobleman hoped Garcia would help him seek justice. His son, a knight who had protected the former queen, had been killed by the church believers. He wished to take his soldiers into the mountains to capture those rebels and avenge his son, and he also hoped Garcia would provide him with snow powder. Garcia knew the powder was her trump card to change the situation.